Hello and welcome to First Contact, the world's first podcast where we openly discuss all things relating to humanity's preparation for open contact with extraterrestrial intelligence. I'm your host, Eesha Patel. If you are loving this content, please be sure to join us in the First Contact Facebook community and let us know what you think. Let's dive into another exciting episode of First Contact. Hi everyone and welcome to today's episode of First Contact. Today's special guest is Bryan Bowden. Bryan is an experiencer, contactee, and a researcher. And in this episode, we dive straight into him telling us some incredible stories. So strap your seatbelts in. You're going to learn some amazing stuff today. How old are your kids?
One is 11 going on 20, and the other one is 15 going on 27.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my 15-year-old looks pretty much like she is 21, which doesn't help, which good, congratulations, but not for me. And my younger one is still like this petite, small little kid. So we're wanting her to grow.
Oh.
Yeah. But both of them actually are very gifted. My younger one seems to have left a bit early without them removing some of the memory. And she's an old soul, and she has lots of information that she, lets dad know a couple of different ways, which is interesting.
Is she psychically, is she quite open?
They're both psychic. The older one has a boyfriend now, so all she cares about is her boyfriend.
Yeah.
But growing up, she was having issues. She was seeing things, a lot of things. And the younger one is definitely gifted and very open. Actually, I'll give you a quick story for her. My grandmother was more of a mother to me than my mother. She passed away. My brother used to live in the house, and he was selling the house, so I was a little upset by all that going away. So my wife was there to help get our stuff. We brought the younger one, and she was about 4 years old, no more than that. So I said, I got a little frustrated. I said, she needs a nap. I'm going to put her in the car and I'm going to sit with her in the car for a bit because I got to cool down. So she's behind me and we're in the car and she's napping and I'm just reminiscing about the things. And about a half an hour later, I hear the voice in the back. I was with your grandmother before I came here. So I'm like, oh, you were? And she goes, yes, she's a very nice lady. I said, yeah, she's very nice. She's great. She goes, but she does this strange thing with her mouth. When she does, she goes, yes. That's what she says. Like, oh, okay. What she doesn't know, because she's never met this woman. I mean, she's at least 15 plus years before my grandma, after my grandmother passed away. When I was growing up, my grandmother used to hum, like that type of stuff. And I used to go, Grandma, that's so annoying. As a little kid, you say these things to your grandparents. And so she kind of stopped. How she knew that.
Wow.
And she's done a couple other things too. She's had foresight and insight and my other half, my wife just doesn't believe any of that. She's like, no, that's not real. But I'm there I think that's one of my roles is to guide them and be there to explain things to them when things like that happen.
How do you navigate that when you two as parents are on such different pages with that kind of stuff?
Well, what's very interesting is when someone doesn't believe, they don't let it affect their life. And they don't see the little nuances. But when you're in it, you're raising, you're at a higher vibration than your spouse or a relative. There's always a relative, oh, you're crazy. I'm going to get a little bit of that. I thought I was going to get it yesterday. A day ago, I had my own little interesting visions for a couple of times to do remote viewing. And I've had some, and this just popped in my head about it. It's constantly popped in my head the last 3 years, but a huge earthquake tsunami off the West coast of the United States.
I saw your post about that this morning because they just had a big earthquake, right?
Yeah, they did, didn't they?
Yeah.
And I'm really concerned more so. Initially, I saw it as the whole West Coast, so like United States, little parts of Canada and Mexico getting a taste of it, but it's going in, like a huge tsunami, a 1,000-foot wall of water. And now I'm a little bit more on the San Francisco area. And I was just looking just now, and I just like, oh, I wasn't even paying attention to it today because I had so many different things I was doing for my business that I wasn't paying attention to current events. I normally do. See, this little thing right here, I pay attention to earth changes, earthquakes, tsunamis, tornadoes. Actually, if you see the map behind me, that's a real live, real-time map of everything that's going on in the world right now. And I have it running 24/7, and it updates in real time. So it will list all the earthquakes and outbreaks and stuff. You have to pay attention to these things, especially if you're dealing with the UFO subject, because a lot of times people don't pay attention to it, but a lot of times when you'll see, I call them constellation craft. They're like little dots in the sky. They come in daytime as well as nighttime. It looks like constellation, little dots. They usually appear when events are going to take place, earth change wise. So you'll get, like, when you're going to get a big volcano erupting, you'll start seeing more UFOs over there, and they'll come up like the constellation type of UFOs.
Well, they're
Happens
assisting,
99%
right?
of
I
the
mean,
time.
that's what I've seen of them, that they're assisting. Like when they know that something's going to happen, they come in to shift the frequencies. Like that's typically what I've seen.
I've seen on different ends. So I think there's a couple different things taking place when that happens. One, energy, a big expansive energy taking place, whether it's an earthquake, a volcano, a storm. That's good energy to siphon and get some more energy for your craft. And I see them going into volcanoes quite often. People don't catch it. They just think, well, the volcano's going on. Like, if you're a UFO researcher, you're looking, you're like, do you see anything yet? Watch the rest of it. You can't be there for 24 hours, but you kind of like sum up and you'll know when you get something. But I think part of them, some of them are definitely here to help. And it's selfish. It's not really that I don't believe that they really care about mankind as much as some people want to believe, but I do believe that they care enough about their own species and what they've done to their own species as far as exterminating and not having a species really to go back to a home planet. They've destroyed that, and they're using our DNA, which happens to be perfect. It's almost like the building block. And I think they need to, they want to make sure we don't kill ourselves. So one, for the resources, whatever it is for the planet, to help humankind go from here up to here vibration wise, like come on, grow up. People aren't growing up. You don't have to fight with everybody all the time and whatever. But I also think they use the when they do the biological experiments and the abductions and then the hybrids, and then they're really trying to continue their race. A lot of these species, and I've done tons of interview with different people from different species that have been contacted and told different things. They're trying to, their species is virtually what you're seeing there is what they are. That they've been here for millions of years. They don't really have a planet to go back to because of what they've done to themselves, and they're trying to grow their species again. Not necessarily to colonize Earth, but to say, okay, we made a big mistake. Let's go and try to fix it. But
what planet are you referring to here?
There's a variety of different, there's different species. There's reptilians, is it, the mantis. I like to call, they look like Bigfoot. They're like Albawitch and Bigfoot. They're two different types. There's a variety of different species in different galaxies. And, you have the Draconians, you have the Pleiadians, you have the Nordics. There's all different spots around, not only visible through this galaxy, but other galaxies that we haven't even gotten to yet. We just, some of the telescopes now, the Woods telescope is amazing because we're seeing things that are just like, it's not part of our galaxy. It's like, look, there's other things going on here. And I'm a thorough believer that, in the equation, that if you have life in one place, there is more life elsewhere. And I know that we've been interacted with. I know that we've had different species make themselves known variety of different governments, and to make their lives easier to get what they need done without having any problems. But there's multiple different planets. I just don't know them all. There's different areas. I mean, we have a couple of planets right by Jupiter and the moons, the size of a planets that just is equivalent to the Earth. What's the not Europa? Got the name of it. Wasn't planning on doing astronomy right now, but there's a few planets that are we could pretty much live there and not have it's still a Goldilocks zone. We can, we'd have to adapt a little bit, but very similar to Earth construct. Look at what took place in Mars, for example. That planet was once most likely covered with grass and an atmosphere and mountains. I mean, they already discovered water, and we know there's water up there. What happened to them? What did they do, or how did they destroy themselves? So now it's this barren surface. They go inward. They believe some races do go inward. We have them here on this planet. Or did they just abandon it? We're kind of seeing the tail ends, and now we have to fit the pieces together, in the puzzle. And of course, what you get on TV and when you get, from some of these rovers and stuff, you're not going to get the real deal. They're not going to let you know that, oh, by the way, there's aliens on Mars. It's always a sci-fi angle of it, but they can't reveal that because it threatens the controls they have down here. Talking about human beings at this point. So there's a variety of different things taking place. I mean, it's gets very frustrating after a while, especially when you know more than others.
Yeah.
So it's crazy. I mean, may I ask, how did you get involved in this whole craziness?
I'm a contactee, so direct
There you go.
experience. So everything that you're talking about, there's no new information for me in what you've said.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, it's and it's the same here. I've been investigating these things, and not just UFOs, and I don't call them UAPs. That's a government slang term for something that they don't want. UFOs has a bad connotation for some people, whatever reason. They feel more comfortable calling UAPs. Let them call it. I don't care. But I wasn't aware initially if I had missing time or I was taken or am an experiencer. But in 2015, I definitely had missing time. And actually, last May of 22, we moved from New York to Florida. So we were driving back and forth. And I had my second incident of missing time. This is 3 hours, and the whole family was taken, which I did not like. And I can talk to you about that. The first time was in 2015. We had an encounter. We were doing a day-night investigation in upstate New York in a place of high strangeness. And there was 3 of us. It was myself, my partner that I do a lot of research with, Al, and a friend of ours, mutual friend named Bill. And we went to this one lake, and we found a spot at the tip of the lake that we wanted to do a day-night investigation in, and then we were going to come work our way back down. And it's about 2 miles up to the tip of the lake. And at that point, we were doing experimentation. We were hearing rock knocks and tree knocks and typical cryptid Sasquatch Bigfoot. And we did have a couple of incidents with this cryptid doing a bluff charge on us. It scared the hell out of our friend Bill. He was ready to run into the water at that point. We had to hold him back because he would have gotten killed or hurt. And did whoops, and it did whoop, whoop, whoop. And the 2 whoops were real close by. This thing was no more than 20 feet from us. The third whoop was the other end of the lake, which is 2 miles. Didn't miss a vocal pattern whatsoever. It was the same consistent vocal pattern. And it was at that point I realized that this creature, which I thought was more flesh and blood through my research, you being a contactee, you have certain questions, hypothesis going here, here, and here. And I have to keep it all open until I get more research. And then when you get research, you reassess your research, and then you do it again. And at that point, I went from this creature being flesh and blood totally to interdimensional. And it has an innate ability to do that. And I did study physics and astronomy at one point. And I was thinking about being an astrophysicist. But I realized, okay, I'm spending all this money for university. How am I going to make it back? You know, and there's no money to be made teaching, actually. And if you don't write books and if you don't do research of papers, and then they own all your work. And I'm not really, I don't like that. Not that I make a ton of money on anything. I just want, you know, if I've worked hard, just like yourself, you know, if you work hard on something, you should own that product, even, you know, or something of it. So I believe its innate ability to convert its energy and its matter and its molecular structure on a subatomic level as well, think quantum physics, and go from flesh and blood, physical, into a different form of energy, which will then go subatomic and go interdimensional, so they can go into different dimensions. This is why these creatures disappear. They'll be walking out on you'll follow a track in snow in the middle of a lake, big opening. And then all of a sudden the tracks stop. Where does it go? There's no hole. There's no tracks continue. The only explanation is they have the ability to create a portal, interdimensional, go into it, and then leave and be wherever they want. There's also other kind of explanations for the fact that they can convert their energy from one form to another. And in the process, there's lights that are associated with it. Usually when you convert energy from point A to point B. So from gas to a liquid, there you may not see it all the time, but there is a spark of, you know, that you need energy to create more energy or to create energy. And a lot of people have sightings of they classify UFOs or orbs, and this is basically what they're seeing is the same creature. It's just converting its form, and then eventually it just disappears. It like dissipates, but they're actually going into a subatomic quantitative state, and they get to go where they need to go. After that encounter, which was very interesting, and the video for that, as we're walking from that encounter to the next location we were going to film in, you know, and sit there and talk and do experiments, we had a UFO come from, it was going west to east, and we're at the top of the lake. It was beautiful night, full moon. We did have a meteor shower. It was around St. Hallows Eve, Halloween, and which is on my daughter's birthday is the day before. And we saw this craft going, and it had this orangish yellow incandescent light type of feel to it. And as it's going across the screen, I go, what is that? And I pointed to it, and it stopped immediately, and then it headed towards us. So it was, you know, I'm like, ooh, this is getting interesting. So I took out my camera, you know, my phone, well, not my phone, my camera, and I started videotaping it. And I had unlimited video on there. I mean, I didn't use that much space on there. It doesn't stop after a certain point. But the video is like a minute, maybe minute 30 seconds. I never would have stopped in it. And this craft came no more than 20 feet from our, you know, the top of us. It was blacker than black. It made a musical sound like a, and then it hums. And my buddy Al was in front of us. I was in the middle, and Bill was behind us. And we always do this. Al yelled out before I could, because I was just like, I'm getting this on video. He goes, time check. And Bill says 9:15. And we're maybe 5 minutes to the next spot. It's literally maybe 20 steps. It's not bad. And at one point in the video, you keep hearing the and then the sound. And at one point, Bill sounds very robotic. What is it doing? And it's not natural. This guy, you can hear it. And then it's like, oh, it must have gone away. Then his voice changed again, and it must have gone away. So when we went to the next spot, this was 9:15. It happened. It seemed to last maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes, no more. Went to the next location. Bill went off on his little bit own, you know, to the area we were setting up, and we decided to call. We do have a psychic in Arkansas that helps us with some of the cases, and we're calling her. We're about to call her. Al says, time check. What time is it? And I said, it's 11:45. So
Wow.
we lost time from about 9:40 to a quarter to 12. And at that point, which got interesting, got her on the phone. She was upset with us. And we heard somebody walking like with a family, not that far in the distance. So we hung up with her quickly and we told Bill, put your lights on, because we don't want, if there is, why would a family be out at 12:30 in the middle, like 12 o'clock in the morning on Halloween, like they're going for like a picnic or a hike. So we turned the headlamps on because we didn't want to scare them, like three guys in the woods, knives, whatever. And we're waiting and we're waiting and waiting. No one came. So we walked around to the area where we felt they were coming down the path, and no one was there. So we called back the psychic Cindy, and Cindy's really mad. And I was like, what are you both doing? And I'm like, we explained it to her. I said, we just heard a family coming here. We thought she goes, they're not there. They won't be there till tomorrow. You're in a time-space rip. And we're like, what? Because yeah, you're in time-space rip. And then she starts telling us the things we're going to see within the forest, and little people and elementals. And I'm seeing them. I get to see these things. My partner Al doesn't see them with his eyes, but we jerry-rigged the camera so him and Bill are looking. And I said, look, one thing went from one tree to the other. There's another one over to, I'm dictating to where to look, and they're seeing it in the camera, and they're supposedly recording because we had this thing rigged up. And we seem to be doing this for about 25, 30 minutes. And we're like, we just got the greatest evidence ever. Yeah. Let's go watch it. And we go to watch it, and the card won't work. Yeah. Go figure. Yeah. Yeah, they don't want you to videotape you. So that was my first missing time experience for about 2 hours. And then, which was interesting because I had something in the next day when we all went home. Normally after an investigation, we may go to a diner or a local place. They'll have coffee. We'll just discuss what about you? Everybody just wanted to get out of there. And when I drove from where that was back to New York City, where my apartment was, I was very much like looking around in the area, which was, I'm not nervous, or I don't get nervous or scared about a lot of things. Unless a doctor goes, it's a girl. Another doctor tells me I'm gonna have another daughter someday. I'm like, oh, but the next day when I woke up, my wife, she went out to get my kids. They were in like religious school, and I'm on the phone, and I woke up and I had this like terrible metallic taste in my mouth. And I went to the restroom, and I'm like, what's going on? I opened my mouth up. It's blue. The whole thing's blue. I have blue phlegm coming up, and I'm like, this is not right. So I called up my buddy Al, and I said, how you feeling? Is anything weird going on with you? He goes, I have this really feel like something hard in my lip. I said, well, I have this metallic thing in my mouth, like I ate some kind of Smurf, one of those little cartoon things, something, it's weird. I said, do me a favor, you call Bill up and find out what happened to him, if he has any issues. So he went to call Bill, he hung up. My wife comes in with the kids, and mind you, I just got up. It was a long investigation. So all I'm wearing is like, shorts, like tennis shorts. I have no shirt on. And my daughter, oh, Daddy's here. I'm like, what happened to you? Where'd you get those bruises? And I'm like, what? And I looked in the mirror, and I have a bruise on my upper chest and down by my stomach. And I didn't hit anything. I didn't bounce into anything. Nothing like that happened. So Al calls me back and tells me that Bill woke up screaming bloody murder in the middle of the night, scared the hell out of his mother. You see, lives with his mom, takes care of her. And I said, we need to discuss what just took place. I know we have missing time, but we need to really discuss this. But we all agreed to not regress unless we all regress. And you have to have the right person to do a regression. But so we all agreed on that. But I actually know a ton of abductees, multiple, for a variety of different species, and people that I trust very well. So I played them the video. I said, what do you think of this? And right back, one of my friends, Derek, goes, I think you've been downloaded. And I go, really? He goes, yeah, you definitely were downloaded. I said, well, we were thinking about regressing. He goes, how do you sleep at night? And I said, well, I always have a hard time sleeping. I go to sleep late. He goes, no, 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 no. When you go to sleep, you sleep? I go, yeah, I mean, I sleep. I'm not perfect, but I sleep. He goes, don't regress yourself. Because once you open that, I apologize about that. But
That's okay. Welcome back.
yeah, but the problem with that, and I think if I could try my other system if you want. I don't know
No,
if
that's
it'll let
okay.
me.
Let's just keep the
Okay.
conversation going. Otherwise,
No problem.
these
So
tech
I'll just-
issues sometimes get a bit annoying.
Well, this does happen a lot in the research end of a lot of this stuff. It does happen quite often,
Mm.
and it's not uncommon. I mean, sound bites and different things on that. But after that, I'm just going to move this a little bit closer so I don't look so far away. So after that experience, I didn't necessarily want to regress myself at that point because there are some issues with regression and the memory. And I don't really need that in my life at this point with young kids and not to be able to cope properly. Some people can't handle it. So I didn't do that. And then the next missing time that I remember was a year ago. We kept driving back and forth from New York to Florida because we're looking to move to Florida. Better environment, better schools, what have you. And there's a halfway point when on the drive, so you don't have to drive the 20 hours down. And we started at one point going to a place called Fayetteville, North Carolina. And that's really not the halfway point. If you go an extra hour into South Carolina, Florence, it's a lot quicker, believe it or not, for the next leg of the trip. So we're going down and we get to Fayetteville, and this is, at night. I mean, we would drive for hours. My two kids are in the back sleeping, my wife's sleeping. And I know that we hit Fayetteville and they're pulling us off the major highway, which is 95. And they're giving us a detour. And I'm like, okay, what the heck's going on? I've never saw highways closed before for any reason. So we happen to get off the same exit that where the hotel would have been. And we get on a country road. Now I know country roads. I grew up in summer camp. And we used to go there because my mother worked there. Then I worked in these summer camps. They're great. And what happened is I used the opportunity. I noticed something strange in the sky. It was turning, it wasn't a star. It had a lot more mass to it. It was going red, orange, green, blue, purple, violet, white burst. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And we're about an hour, no more than an hour from where we were to the hotel. And I have a nasty habit of smoking at the time. And I said, you know what? I want a cigarette. I'm gonna pull off the side of the road. So I pulled off the side of the road to one, smoke a cigarette, and two, check out this object. And you have to understand, Fayetteville in the US is where a major military base is. So what I'm seeing there very well could be a drone or a military drone at this point. But I've seen objects similar to it that weren't drones, and red, orange, green, blue, purple, burst, and what have you. And it's up in the sky, and I'm smoking a cigarette, and I'm like, I wish I had my scope. I had a psionic scope, night vision scope that I could really zoom in on it, record it. And I'm enjoying, watching this thing. It kind of coming big, coming closer, a little bit more of a burst, brighter burst. Oh, that was good. And this is around, and when I pulled over around 11:45 midnight. And the next thing you know, I don't even remember finishing my cigarette. I'm in my car. And I'm kind of like waking up, like, did I just fall asleep? And I have a terrible headache. My neck is killing me. Everybody's sleeping. And I use a product called Waze, and it's directions. And one of the cool features is if you don't move too many times, for a little while, sometimes the screen will go black. You'll tap the screen and they'll say, do you want to resume your trip? So I said, okay, cool. Hit the resume. I'm getting ready to go, drive to this place. And it tells you at the bottom how long it'll be till you get there, assessing for traffic and other incidents. And it should tell me that I'll be there 1 a.m. Mine says 4 a.m.
Mm.
So I'm like, And I get this as I'm driving, and there's a car happened to be behind me. And I can't just pull over. And I'm like, what the heck just happened?
Mhm.
You know, and I'm like, okay, I'm not liking what's happening. And the first thing in my head is abduction. So I'm like, okay, whatever. We get down there and it's 4 o'clock in the morning, and come out of the hotel, checking in. And my wife's like, what time is it? I said, it's 4 a.m. She goes, why did it take so long? I said, well, they closed the road. I can't tell her
Mm.
or my kids what my assessment is. So they closed the road down. And I said, you know, we're here now. Don't worry, we'll sleep a little bit later. We'll still do good. She's like, oh, okay. So we go and we get up the next morning, and we have a one room, 2 queen beds. So my kids sleep in the same bed. I sleep with my wife. And in the morning when we're getting up, my youngest goes, Dad, can you help me with my shirt? I'm like, sure. And as she gets up off the bed, I noticed there on 2 things. There's a little bit of a red spot on the sheet up by the pillow and on the back of her garment. And she's like, what are you looking at? I said, oh no, I'm just looking at your clothes, whatever. And I pull it off. And as I pull it off, on her lower, on the shoulder blade of her right side, there's a BB indentation, like a little ball indentation. And I'm like, okay. I said, how do you guys feel? And they, oh, we feel good. That was, they all had headaches. And my kids never complained. My wife definitely never complains about any of that stuff. So, I had to reiterate, they closed the highway down, and we finally get down to Florida. And our plan is, the place we purchased our home is a new development. And we just happen to know that right around the corner of our development, we have a person we know, us as adults and parents, because our kids go to the same summer camp, which is my old summer camp, and they became friends. So we have like a built-in friendship down there. I don't have family down here. I don't have much family at all. And so we go over and say, oh, we'll go visit you. And we go to visit them, and we're standing outside, and it's beautiful. There's palm trees, and it's kind of getting like the sun's getting ready to set type of thing. And I get this sound, this high-pitched sound in my ear. And I've known for a long time, when you get that sound and it starts doing a little bit of like, changing of the frequency, something's going to, you're going to see a craft, or there's going to be something else there. Lo and behold, as soon as I looked up, I automatically look up now with those high pitched, in the ear. Look up to the right. There's a craft that's red, orange, green, blue, purple, violet burst sitting there. And it's kind of, doing a little bit of a shimmy. And it looks like there's some movement around it. And I just go, I see you. And they're inside. I go, I see you. And I actually even stated, I said, don't mess with my family. And, that was that. And let's fast forward. After that trip, we drove back to New York, and we went out the following weekend with a friend of my wife's. Went out for lunch. Nice place. It was, it's warm, it's sunny out. We're the weekend, perfect. And it's my wife, my 2 daughters, my wife's friend, and her daughter. And I said, you know what? I'm going to go inside to use the restroom, the loo. I'll pay the check and we'll come out. So I go inside, pay the check, use the restroom. And as I'm coming out, my oldest daughter, who is basically like, she doesn't never complain about getting sick. She hardly gets the flu. I mean, she has an immune system of like amazingness. And she's sitting there, and my wife's holding her nose. And I'm like, okay, what the heck is going on here? She goes, she had a nosebleed. I said, what? She said, she has a nosebleed. So I said, she goes, this came out. And she pulls out, and I kid you not, it's about the size of this. And it's about that thick. And I take it from her, and what happened, I take it on the piece of tissue. I mean, it's a square. It's fairly thick. It's like a 16th of an inch. I mean, I'm like, okay, this is interesting. And I just so happened, because while the C-19 was taking place, I used to have plastic gloves or rubber gloves to touch things and whatever, just to keep it safe. And then what I would do is I'd keep these sandwich bags in my pocket because you can get like 500 of them. It's not always gloves. And if you turn them inside out, you can do a door handle, throw it out. Happen to have them on me. And I know somebody that works down at one of the city colleges in Manhattan that does genetics work. So I'm like, okay, here we go. And I picked it up for her. I put it in the bag and I sucked out as much air as possible. And I put some ice in another bag around it because you got to keep a sample pretty, cold in order to keep it. And I'm ready. I'm like, I got to get down. I get back to the house. I got to put this in the freezer. I got to hold on to it, whatever. And it just, so every time I did something like that or tried to do something like that, I got it in the freezer eventually, but it was too much time between. A couple of hours passed by. So it was kind of like everything melted. And it was almost every time I tried to go, okay, I'm going to send this out. I'm going to send this out. So I'm going to contact this person. It was as if something not under my control was telling me subconsciously, you're not doing that. And long story to short, I never got a chance to get this. The sample was ruined. By the time it was finished, it shriveled. It was brittle. It started crumbling. And, I said, maybe even that dust, but it seemed to come out of the bag. It was just, as a researcher, I was so not happy because in my pack, like when I'm not expecting this to happen when we're going out to lunch with friends, in my pack, I carry plastic bags, like the clean bags with tweezers, sample gatherers, individual ones. And I also carry basically a DNA kit. And I carry these breakable ice bags so that it's instant ice, boom. And I could send it off. And then we would put it in the backpack. And once we got into a cooler, we'd send it off to people. I've done that for a couple other teams that I did some work with. And I'm just frustrated. And my wife's like, what's wrong? And I'm like, I can't explain to her, like, oh, by the way, you've all been abducted. And even though you don't believe in it, you've all been abducted. So it's just very, very frustrating. So that's the second time I know of missing time. And again, the only other time where I felt like I had a visitation, and this is really, let me preface this. 45 years worth of research. These are the only times that I'm actually remembering. If there were any previously, I wasn't aware of it. And I think that's purposeful. I don't know, your experience as a contactee, and probably numerous times, initially when you were going through it, you may not have been aware about like what was going on purposely. And a lot of times, I believe a lot of these species will not allow you to remember these things because it's so traumatic to the psyche that people can't handle it. They think they're going nuts. They'll go to, an analyst. It just, I think multiple visitations brings around the people that like, okay, they're more used to this. Now we can open up to them a little bit. Now we can let them remember certain things. And now we can have those experiences.
I think for me, a lot of it was quite intentional. I mean, there were some experiences that happened when I was younger that obviously, weren't conscious. Like for example, I always laugh at this one. When I was 10 years old, I wrote a story in school about my family getting abducted by aliens. And I won an award for that story, like I got up in front of the school and I got a little like certificate and everything, like good job. And I just had a little giggle to myself because I was like, well, I didn't really make up the story. The reason it was so creative was I dreamt this story. And the dream happened when I was like 7 years old. And it took me until I was in my 20s to realize that probably wasn't a dream.
Wasn't a dream. Yeah. That's what I try to explain this to people a lot. I don't know if you've seen any interviews where I try to explain to people, there are dreams and then there are experiences. And when you get to a point where you go to bed, first and foremost, that gives your body an ability to rest the shell. Your consciousness, it gets to try to reach out and connect with the universe. or the universal record, we'll call it. I call it the Akasha record, whatever you want to call it. People call it source. And that's when you're at your most vulnerable. That's when a lot of people get attacked on a psychic level, on a spiritual level. Some of the bad dreams are not just bad dreams. They're actually things
I used to have those as well, because I think obviously, you know, when you come to this planet, you come here with a purpose, a reason. Like I really believe in that. I believe that we're here for a specific purpose. And I know that part of my role is to help with the awakening or the lifting of vibration of the people. So what happened for me when I was a teenager was I got horrendously attacked. Psychic attacks were very real. And, you know, some people would put it down to sleep paralysis and things like that. But I mean, I was getting demonic wolves with red eyes chasing me in my dreams. And every time something like that would happen, I would just call upon Christ. Now, I wasn't Christian. I wasn't raised as, you know, Catholic or anything like that.
Right.
But my parents, so my mom's Hindu, my dad's Muslim, but they did put us in a Catholic school. And so I never went through any of the sacraments, but I knew enough about the stories of Jesus Christ, and I knew the Lord's Prayer. And so whenever something would happen, I would say the Lord's Prayer. And for at least a good couple of years, I slept with the cross, the Jesus on the cross, next, like under my pillow or next to my bed, you know, because that was the thing that I felt would keep me safe. But it was in my early 20s that I then started looking more into, you know, spiritual practices. And at that point, I'd already started meditating. And I started white light meditations from the age of like 10 or 11 years old, because I'd get weird things coming to my house in the middle of the night. And so I just went on the internet back then, you know, Windows 95, whatever my dad had. And so I would just jump online and see if I could find any research about it. And so I discovered these white light meditation practices. So I started doing that from a very young age. And then in my early 20s, I met somebody who taught me how to activate my Merkaba light body. And that's what then eventually later on down the track led to me being able to channel and consciously travel. So now, instead of just, you know, getting abducted, now I actually consciously travel to whichever starship or planet or whatever. So now it's more conscious. But I think back then, there was a level of openness already because of what I was here to do and what my role is on the planet. So now that I look back on it, I can see how all the steps are perfectly in place. But some of it was scary, you know, very scary to go through that as a teenager as well.
It's terrifying. I mean, thankfully, I never had the bad dreams of being like chased by monsters or anything like that. I've always had very vivid dreams, which I call experiences, because here's what I tell people. The difference between a dream and an experience is dreams are vague. I think you were there with mom, and I think we were driving in a car or something that looked like a car. It's very vague. When you go, we were there with you, you were wearing your purple shirt, your hair was down, you were smiling, you had the red lipstick that you bought, blah, 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 and we were flying on a carpet that was patterned with, you know, what, when you start doing that, that's not a dream. You are doing that. And that's what happened. Like you just mentioned it, when you raise your vibration higher and you let all this distraction, these calcifying effects that keep you down and oppressed, that's what those go away when you sleep. It's you and your body at rest, and then you get the theta waves and REM sleep, and that's when your spirit rises. I was trying to explain to people, do you ever have a dream where you feel like you just, you know, you fell down like a roller coaster? And they're like, yeah, I that happened last night. I said, well, that was your body reattaching, your spirit, your soul, your body reattaching. That's what it is, you know. But in my experiences, those dreams, they're not dreams, they're real. And what you do or what you choose to do with them, sometimes they're informative, they're predictive. Sometimes, you know, you know, you are alerted to something taking place and you should react to it. But most people don't, because they're just like, oh, it's a dream. They blow it off. It's when we meet people like yourself and myself and other, we'll call like-minded individuals, which are purposely coming together like we are right here. There's a reason you and I are talking. It's not just like, hey, I saw you on TV or I saw you here. We're talking because we're meant to be talking, and we made an agreement to talk. We're supposed to be together. We're supposed to share this experience with other people and help them to evolve. positively. The fact that you can now channel is a fantastic thing. I do something called remote viewing. Well, I like to call it remote viewing. It keeps my sanity, but the psychic for our group, Cindy, who is like a sister to me, she's like, oh, you're a psychic like me. A couple of friends I know that are remote viewers said, no, you're a remote viewer. I just know that I do what I do, and I've been doing it for decades. And I've been doing this before I knew what it was called. And because you start doing this, and when you start, and I always tell people, start meditating 5 minutes, just 5 minutes a day. First of all, you'll feel great afterwards, and all the little things won't bother you, but that will start to help to decalcify the important parts of your body to help you connect. And when you start doing that, you start picking up other things. So I've opened up other portals, if you'd like, in my ability spectrum, some of which still not too thrilled about some of them. But I do have, I have abilities to talk to people that are not alive anymore. I see people. I can give you information about past, present, and future. I can go and travel to any place I'd like, and I want. There's a lot of different things. I use it to help people as much as possible. And the problem is, and I'm sure you had like, oh, that's a great story. Where'd you, and then when you try to tell your folks like, well, this is really what happened to us, then like, oh, you always use your imagination. I'm like, no, Mom, we really got abducted. They just don't get it. But I've really tried to help other people to, come to terms with you're better than what you are, and you can raise your vibration and do amazing things with it for the good of everybody, not just yourself.
I think that's what it all comes down to at the end of the day. I mean, everyone that I've spoken to who's in this space, there always seems to be this huge crossover between the spirituality and the ufology side of things. I guess not for everyone. There's some people that are very nuts and bolts about it. They just want to know about the physical sightings. But yeah, I mean, I came at it from the very multidimensional perspective. So before I had any physical sightings, I think I had telepathic connection for about a year before I saw anything physical. So for me, it was a very internal, spiritual kind of experience. And then as I evolved through the journey of that, and I became more, I guess you could say, mature in my discernment, I was able to pick up on more specific frequencies and different beings and the different races, and so it's been quite a journey. And I think there is this commonality with all the conversations that I'm having, that ultimately we are all here to help humanity. And there's nothing, you're right, there's nothing selfish in this. I mean, it really is just about when we get to that stage as a human race, that we finally open up to our star brothers and sisters. I mean, I call them star family, not aliens, and our star brothers and sisters, they're here to support us, they're here to help us. Some of them are also here to experiment on us. And I think there's something to be said for the levels of people or beings that are out there, and not everyone is in a high vibrational state. I think it's important to acknowledge that. But I think it's the same as planet Earth. It's like if a being from another planet was coming to Earth and they wanted to ask, well, is Earth a good planet or a bad planet? Well, some people on planet Earth are really amazing, and some people on planet Earth kind of sucks. So I think it's the same out there. There are beings out there that are very high vibrational, that are benevolent, and then there are beings out there that aren't. But those beings, from what I've seen, are also on a journey of evolution, just like we are. So who are we to judge?
Yeah. I mean, we shouldn't be judging extraterrestrial or interdimensionals. I mean, they're so much further advanced than us on so many levels that it's beyond belief. Yeah, but there are a lot, and I've talked about it on when I'm not doing this to drop names, but I did UFO Witness season 2. And I remember filming for it, and the director was like, I'm talking to Melissa Title about what's going on and the specific cases in Connecticut. And he goes, well, I want to, they were kind of like, okay, let's try to do something. I want to get it dark. And I said, how dark do you want to go? And he's like, what do you mean? I said, well, how dark do you want to go? Because you can go really dark right now. And the dark side of UFOs, which I'm one of the few, if basically that I know of in the last 45 plus years, talked about the human mutilations and how some of these beings aren't that nice, and it's not all about love and light, and it's about sustenance, and there's parts of it that's just doesn't, it's not that good. So we went down the dark side, and I think I scared the hell out of Melissa at one point. And it wasn't intentional. It's just like, we can't, my personal opinion is we can't just say, hey, we're here, come visit us and come take, no, you have to have some discernment, like you did. And then over time, you'll assess who, okay, they're, I could deal with those. The Pleiadians they're pretty good. And the Nortex, some of the reptilian mantis are, a little bit more aggressive, maybe not what we want, and then we could open up a dialogue. But I also believe that we have abilities internally, the God-given abilities that when God created, well, I'm going to use God at this point, created man. Maybe had a little tweaking from extraterrestrials, we don't know yet. But we have innate abilities that we're not even harnessing and using. And if we did, all the problems you see on the world stage today, on local news and whatever, they'd go away. Because no one would tolerate the evil and the darkness. No one would tolerate it. It's something to be said that when you start doing things positively, you start thinking positive, guess what? When you send those positive thoughts out into the ether, into the universe, they are received back at you multiple times. It's a hefty balance of yin yang. We'll always have this balance. With a lot of good, there's a little bad, and with a lot of bad, there's a little good. And where do you want to be on that spectrum? And can we change? But let's work together on that.
I think
that's my
hit the nail on the head there. I mean, this is really the conversation that this entire show is all about. It's about empowering people to make those choices for themselves. I mean, there's a lot of other podcasts out there that talk about just the proof side of things. And for me, I'm like, cool. Like I know I personally don't need any convincing. I've had contact for over a decade. So I think the next conversation from that point is what happens when we connect as a human race, and what does that mean? And how do we do that in a positive and peaceful, loving way? Because I think one of the issues that is happening right now in the ufology and the spiritual community is people are getting really excited by the fact that they're connecting at all, but they're not discerning. Like, I mean, I've spoken to people who've been to C5 meditations and, like group sort of experiences and things like that. And they're like, wow, I connected with this and this. And I'm like, but don't you feel the frequency of that? Like, you've just allowed these like grays and reptilians to enter your energy field, and you don't think that's a problem? Like, and so there is a level of discernment that I think needs to come in terms of, the first step is, yes, let's just open up. But the second step is, well, okay, let's be mindful about who and what we're actually connecting with.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, I've always said to people, you won't leave your door open at night, right? So why would you play with a Ouija board and let that be open? You don't know what you're bringing in from that side of the spectrum. I have actually conducted, and I don't, these active intelligent encounters, which is what I call them. I don't, CE5, whatever you want to call it, where you actively are asking for some kind of interaction. But before we do that, we always say, we allow people to say whatever prayer they would like. And we tell them we need to say a prayer of meditation, ask for God's, whoever you believe in, for their help, protection, and safe security, because nothing bad, evil, or negative is allowed to permeate here and travel with you. Okay. This is how we started. And then we start by sending that message into the universe to get that active encounter. And we do it as a whole. I think you have to preface by always protecting yourself. You got to protect the house and home first. Yeah, it's fantastic when you interact with extraterrestrials. Give you an example. My partner wasn't at this meeting. We used to go to this meeting with a group in New York, and everybody would talk about UFOs and stuff and aliens. And I was the one that said, let's conduct some CE5s. So we went out one day on the patio, and there was one woman that was in the group. Her name was Carolyn, and she was just really being annoying and nasty. And I said, we were all, they were using the career protocols, and I do not like that. I do my own thing, and I use remote viewing, and I will use on my phone binaural beats to kind of clear everything out so I can focus in. I can do the remote view / meditation. And I said, there's a group of us down here. I saw the location. We want to connect with you. That was going through our heads. And I was literally transported. We were about 20 miles north of New York City. And we're on the Hudson River, which is a main river there. And we could see the George Washington Bridge. These are all landmarks from where our vantage point was. And we were in Hastings, New York. And I'm sitting there outside, and everybody's listening to the protocols. And I just find it that a bit annoying. You know, I don't like guided meditation for myself. I just don't like it. It doesn't always work. Like, stop talking. I'm just get to that point. Stop talking. You know, God, can you please stop talking? So I started doing my own thing. And I literally was transported through the remote view from where I was, and I saw myself pulling back from the planet, going up, pulling back. I went into space, and there were 3 craft up in space. They were your classic saucer shape, roundish for the most part. And what was interesting was in the center seat position was somebody who was Nordic. And the way the craft was broken into sections, it was like a straight section. Then one section went to the right, one section to the left, and they were all looking out one end of the wall. And although it looked metallic, if you looked at it from the outside, if you were inside, you can discern that it was also like a liquid metal where you could actually see through it. And I guess it was protective shield or what have you. And I'm sitting there, and I can see my reflection of who I am in this craft right now in the window. And you have to understand, so I'm on the left end of this, then there's to the right of me is this ginormous, I would classify as a Nordic, look like Thor. And he's sitting there, and they're all looking, down on the planet. And then to the right of him is a section where it looked like they were almost like a control room type of thing, where there were other beings that were working on stuff, and some were checking outside. And I was able to look out, and I can see my reflection in off this glass type of material. And there are 2 rows, like tiered, one down here, one here, and they're filled with 3 grays. And then I'm on the second row of grays. And no, I'm on the first row down on the bottom, sorry. And I'm on the right, the first seat. And I'm now a gray. I'm actually inside a gray being, extra-terrestrial, who isn't really gray, he's more taupe, but that's a different story. And I'm looking, and I can see my reflection, and I remember getting up from my seat. I go up to the window, and I start moving my lips and my face, and I'm touching my face, because I'm blown away by this at this point. And I'm like, holy cow, I'm a gray. I'm in this gray. And I can see in the reflection, all the other grays are now, everybody's looking at me. And the Nordic guy is now looking at me like, what the heck is going on here? And without missing a beat, I turned to him, I said, there are people down there on Earth, they're trying to contact with you. Can you go down there? And they want you to go and make your presence known. And I said, but there's one person there she can't see the object. Her name's Carol, and she's red hair. I went through this, but she just annoyed me. And I'm not normally like this, but she was really being belligerent. And the next thing you know, I could see out the window. I was so close to it. I could see the Earth there, and I could see across the way, there's another craft with other beings in it. I could see into the craft. Similar setup as this. And we start heading down towards Earth. And it just, the weirdest thing, you get this huge planet, and I'm seeing the East Coast, and the Atlantic. Then I'm seeing more of the East Coast. Then it goes back into like, focus. And then I'm getting to the New York area. And I'm literally coming down. And as we get to the New York City area, I can see the peninsula with Long Island is whatever. I pop back out and I said, you're going to get a craft. It's going to be right there. It's coming right there. And I pointed straight by the bridge. So there are 7 other people there, plus this woman, Carolyn, that are facing. I said, look, you're going to see a burst and they're going to be right there by the bridge. Now I'm straddling 2 things. I'm straddling the earth itself and this craft, but I'm getting more and more to the, back to earth. Mm. And they go, where? He says, oh, that's a helicopter. I said, no, it's going to burst now. And as soon as it burst, it went, and it closed. And then, and everybody's like, oh my God, did you just see it? I said out loud, do it again so they could see it again. As soon as I said it, went whoop, and it burst to come back down. So everybody's freaking out. I said, now move closer. And I said, they're going to move closer. They're going to be right here. And as soon as I pointed to it, it appeared right where I pointed. And everybody saw it. It lasted for, it lasted for a while. It lasted for about a minute and a half. Well, good solid minute and a half. And the woman, Carolyn, never saw anything. Her back was to the whole thing. They didn't let her see it for whatever reason. And 7 other people saw it. And they're like, how'd you know that? I said, I remote viewed it. I was in the crowd. And I try to explain it to people. And these people believe. The problem is, just because someone believes in something like that doesn't mean they're going to believe what you're telling them, even though it's true. So we still have that problem in this community of there's still little segregated groups that don't like us because some people can do more than others, Well,
yeah. I got banned from the local CE5 event basically for something very similar. I went along once, not of my own free will. A bunch of people dragged me along to this thing like, Eesha, you got to come. And so I drove all the way down there. I'm like, okay, cool. I didn't even know anything about it. This was like years ago. Right. And then I went in there and I'm like talking about all my experiences with Star Family, this and that. Anyway, a few years later, I saw there was another event happening and I just on Facebook selected, that I might go. Anyway, the organizer of the group reached out to me and was like, oh, the last time you were here, you brought this negative energy in the group. You acted like you're better than us. Don't ever come to our events. I was like, no worries. Got my own contact in my backyard. See you later. It's sad, but there's quite a bit of segregation in there, which defeats the purpose of what we're doing, because ultimately it's going to take unified field consciousness to have a full open contact. So, we really need to sort our own stuff out within these different community groups in order to have those higher level of experiences.
This is the problem we have in the United States and the world right now, the disclosure movement. And the problem is, and I've stated this numerous times on interviews and public appearances, we already had disclosure. It took place in 1977. It was called Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And J. Allen Hynek was in it. And right there, he didn't have to say anything. And all the aliens are coming out of the craft. If you don't think that we were in contact with aliens, we have this technology and we've been exchanging people with them. The problem is you have too many people in this field. Discredit the government-based people, the military. They're in it for a totally different reason, and it's all about making war and who's the winner. People have been ridiculed so much of their lifetime. They want that "I told you so" moment. But this is bigger than that. Disclosure happened. If you've seen a craft, if you've been abducted, if you remember being abducted, if you have missing time, and some people can't handle that and they're still unnerved by it, you don't need disclosure. It's happening. Mm. And for some people, not every experience is great. For a lot of people, it depends on the race and whatever. But when you connect with the right beings and entities, they kind of, in many ways, rally around you. They don't want to give you up to, and that's a good thing. I'll tell you right now, down here in Florida, we have this we have these 3 windows in our living room area of the house. And I stay up late. I just can't, I'm a dad. I can't sleep. I worry about everything, and my brain goes and I work on other stuff, I'm writing a book and a couple books. And I'll just, every once in a while, I'll sit there and get a moment to sit. And I just keep looking out the window because I know I'm expecting the entity to pop up. I know I'm being watched. I know I'm being watched, and I'm waiting for it to pop up. I know it's happening. and it's just, it hasn't yet, but you I guess you may understand that when you get, there's certain tells when they're going to come and say, allow that visitation to take place. You know, there's certain tells with it. I actually happened to help a lady out of Canada last week. She was having an issue, unnerving. She was by Shag Harbor. It's near Nova Scotia up there. And there was an incident. She used to live up there, and she had a missing time experience. She saw a huge craft. It came close. And she's always had this feeling, you know, like this, like something was missing or taken from her. And I saw everything in I knew exactly what took place with her, but I had to walk her through it. She's more open to it. She's past a certain hurdle. So she's a little bit more like understanding about what's going on. And then I've had other people that I know I have to be very ginger about how I talk to them and how I relay information to them. You know, I have a woman, I wish I could share you this video, upstate New York. She has a huge piece of property. It's a farm. She has multiple grays, extraterrestrial visitation. She's been abducted. Her family's been abducted. And she contacted me because I have a group called the New York State UFO Project. And where we do, like, we try to help out. It's not just in New York State, it's a global organization. We've helped out people actually in Australia, in the UK, Japan, and elsewhere. She just she couldn't handle it. She just, you know, you got to be very, very careful with, she doesn't, you know, I can't tell her, by the way, you're being, yeah, you are being abducted. So, you know, I can't just keep saying it. She has a feeling about it. And she said, well, you tell them to leave. And I'm like, lady, I can't tell them to leave. They don't listen to me. They do what they do, and they're going to continue to do it. Nobody can get rid of them. And there's a video I have. She sent me several videos, and right there on the screen, it's from a distance. And I think the gray knew that the camera was working and was trying to be very careful about its appearance. Right in the middle of a tractor, peeks his head out and he looks up and he looks back. And I'm like, oh, I want to share this so bad, you know, to show people, but it's confidentiality. You can't do it, you know, only a certain investigators. I mean, I've seen things I wish I could share. It would solve the whole disclosure like that, you know, but there's still people in the world today that are not going to be on that train of higher consciousness and everybody loving each other and a peaceful environment. We got to get past this, you know?
Well, I mean, that's the whole point of me putting together this show, is firstly to explain to people that, you know, the show's called First Contact, right? But first contact isn't when the government says it's happening. It's you get to have it. Like my first contact was over 10 years ago. You know, for me, disclosure it's long in the past for me. So I think it's just giving people the, you know, the awareness that disclosure very much happens on a personal level more so than on a collective level. And then when enough people have it, when enough people are awakened to those experiences, then basically there's going to be no choice but the government to come out and say, oh yeah, by the way, it's been a thing. But at that point, it'll just be like, yeah, we already knew that, moving on, you know? So I think it's time to just sort of take things into our own hands a little bit and not wait for some official kind of release to happen, because I don't see that happening anytime soon.
No, let's put it this way. They've been really good about keeping, I'm not talking about the government, different variety of species have been great about keeping their presence unknown.
And, except to those who they want it known to. They're very selective about it.
They're 100% selective about it. And I've always been on the same path of helping people numerous different times. And everybody, like, you know, I've had people trying to read me like, you were a healer, you were a medicine man. I'm like, yeah, I know all these things. I know this is part of the reason why they allow visitations and do what they do. But these beings will make their presence known. They will be the ones that give you disclosure.
Exactly.
And I think it's actually think it's going to be sooner than later, but I love what you're doing with this project and bringing people, enlightening people is very important. And you have a nice way about yourself to do that, and sometimes, what is it? You get more with honey than lemons. And, I love your angle and how this works, because it's a great discussion to have. You can talk to all these people you see on TV all the time, what's his name? George from Ancient Aliens. It's gotta be aliens, but no one's having a real conversation about, listen, we've got to change your attitude. Okay. And you got to be a little bit more open to positive. You got to go positive with stuff. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like you said before, and I've said it before, their energy is something you just not get it out of the house. I don't want it near me, but for some people, they vibe with that. They enjoy the reptilian side of the coin or mantis or something else. But then again,
that speaks a lot. I mean, that speaks volumes to people's vibrations. I mean,
the
vibration that you put out is the vibration that you get. I mean, people talk about it in the law of attraction manifestation sense, but the same applies to contact. If you have a loving frequency that you're emanating throughout the universe, you are going to get contact with angelic beings and high vibrational beings. And I do want to just add in there, like, some people are having these experiences not of their own free will. They're not consciously choosing it. And so I don't want there to be this sort of like, oh, if I'm getting abducted, maybe there's something wrong with me, because that's not what I'm saying here. But
no.
If anything, if people out there who are listening to this are having these unwanted experiences, the biggest thing to know is that there is a space of empowerment in that, because there is a universal decree of free will. Here on planet Earth, we have free will. And if you're being abducted against your will, if you're being harmed against your will, you have every right to turn around and say no. And I've heard some of the very sneaky things that these malevolent beings do to get permission, because, there's something changed around, I think it was around the 70s, something actually changed quite dramatically, in that there was an agreement that happened between these beings and beings on Earth. And I don't know who exactly signed those papers or contracts, but there was an agreement that you have to get somebody's permission before they do it. But the way they do it is so sneaky. And I've had conversations with people who are like, oh, they told me that they needed my semen sample for this, to save their race. And so I gave it to them. Like, no, I don't think you just understand. You've given up your life force energy for their experiments because of what they've told you, but you haven't discerned the truth behind that. So that's very naughty. Those beings shouldn't be doing that, And so when you get into the nitty gritty of it, I think the biggest message that I've received from staff family who I connect with are that everyone has free will. And if you are having these experiences against your own free will, you are allowed to say no, because they have to get your permission in order to touch you.
Yeah, I mean, it's and part of that, and I'm just going to caveat for that, is sometimes you do give out of your free will, but you purposely are not going to remember that because I gotta be honest, it's a traumatic experience, no matter if you're a male or female, to go through an examination. Very traumatic, and they do some strange things to you. I've had those 2 missing times. I've had an incident also that definitely I would not have said yes to. But you know what? I don't know in the back of my mind what I have or haven't, and I don't really recall what beings I've seen on my own personal experience, although it's very interesting. A good friend of mine out of the Canada who's has an extremely talented psychic medium, probably one of the best in the world. Her name is Katie Turner, and her, myself, and this other guy Justin were having like a little round table, and he was recording the audio but not the video. And I was doing this in my old apartment, so I did it in my kitchen, which is a railroad kitchen. It's straight. So I would sit in the back, about a foot away from the window behind me. I'm 7 stories in the air, mind you. So I'm high, 7th floor, and I put a backdrop behind me so you don't see the really bad window with all the pots and pans, whatever. And as we're doing this interview, and I'm actually doing it on my phone, I get this impression in my head of an extraterrestrial, and I already saw it. It's a tall gray, It's not the little grays, it's the tall grays, the ambassador grays, the ones that are on the mission.
Mm.
And at the next thing, as I'm talking, sitting there, my friend Katie goes, and she's like, and then she pulls back, and I, we keep talking. And at the end of it, I go, what the hell did you just see behind me? She goes, oh my God, you caught that? I'm like, how can I miss it? And she goes, I'm watching, there's an alien that is coming out behind you. And I said, she goes, I said, well, describe it. What did it look like? He goes, it was weird. It kind of like a little bit mean, big eyes. And I said, hold on. I found a picture of, what I was in my head. And I sent it to her. She goes, oh my God, that's it. I said, yeah, that's a tall gray.
Mm.
And I probably got taken that night with unbeknownst to me. And I'm fine with it. If I you know what, I'm good with not remembering bad examination. Okay. I don't want to remember, like, don't put that any place. Okay. Show me the secrets of the universe. But little by little, the way it works for me, and I think that they tapped into you as well, as I get these I get downloads and I get images in my head. And they've ramped up. On March 2nd, I had a massive heart attack. Unplanned, mind you. I don't think anybody plans for them, but I figured like 10 to 15 years, down the line. And ever since that incident, I've literally have been getting more and more and more and more downloads. Different things will pop in. Different people, different situations. I'll see little bits and pieces. I'll start hearing some things, and it started to get a little bit, bizarre. But I'm writing it down. I'm journaling it. I'm using it. I guess I've graduated at this point, if you'd like to call it, on the vibrational spectrum. And so I'm getting more and more of these things. The problem is, even one of my partner, Al, he likes to, bust my chops and, oh, you're full of it. And, I don't want to be right about events. I just posted another one, and I hope I'm wrong, but that was an instantaneous download, and I'm pretty accurate with those. And I hope I'm wrong. But another problem we have with the extraterrestrials is, down here on Earth, there are powers that be are playing around with timelines, and they should not be doing that.
Yeah.
And that's causing a lot of problems for, these beings. It's just, it's almost like, when will we learn?
Yeah, that's something I'm very, very aware of as well. I noticed, particularly with C19, the timeline shifts that happened. In fact, it accelerated the disclosure movement. So in some ways, it kind of worked out all right, because all the messages I got in early 2020 were like, oh shit, this needs to now move forward like a decade, So I was like, okay, cool. But hence I've pivoted now into doing this. I shut down my business last year with all the other stuff I was doing. I was playing around more in like energy healing, manifestation, abundance. But again, that to me was like child's play, just kind of waiting for the real work to start, and this is the real work, like the actual connections and bringing in star family and all that. Like that to me is where the real work is. And soon as everything started happening at the end of 2019, I saw the timeline shifts and I felt it, because I was on the East Coast at a retreat, and I kid you not, I felt the timeline drop. Like it was such a visceral feeling in my body. And then straight away I tuned in and I was like, what's going on, guys? And, for the last few years, I've been following the ascension timeline, like, the earth lifting up in vibration. And when that drop happened, there was that moment where I was like, oh my God, like this is the first time I've seen us go off the ascension timeline into whatever crazy thing is going on. It did rectify within 3 days. It bumped back up into an alternate, but it was an alternate ascension timeline, not the original one that we were on. And so like I've kind of been watching what's been happening behind the scenes with all the little corrections that Star Family have been making to the timelines because of those beings that have messed around with them. So very aware of that side of things.
I can feel it. I get the feeling of things ramping up at different points in time. They've been playing around here and there, and I also I've helped people out, so call it readings or whatever. And I know that they're off and they're normally not. And I know why they're off, because I can see the shift. There's a jump from
Well,
timeline A
it's
to
hard.
B.
It's, I mean, for psychics who are doing predictions right now, it's almost impossible sometimes, because you say something and 3 months later the timeline changes, and 3 months later the timeline changes. And so, you know, there's levels of unpredictability. Well, not unpredictability. It's because what's happening is because of everything that's happened in the last 2 to 3 years, it's easier to have a more present moment to moment transition rather than fixed timelines. And so the old way of doing psychic readings, where you're reading into the most present timeline, isn't going to work anymore, because everything is converging into singular point consciousness. So good luck with that, you know?
Oh yeah. I mean, I've seen events that I'm like, and I know are going to hiccup, but they're going to pop over and then hiccup back. And because people, there are powers that be that are playing around with telling people stop playing around with this. And one of the things that the worst offenders of this is CERN. And the last year, around the July 1st, 2nd, 3rd, for like a week prior to the July 5th, when they ramped it back up again, you could taste it in the air. It's this tension. You're getting a little bit more angry, and everybody's like, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, you know, something's not right. Something's going to happen. Something's going to happen. Something's going to happen. And then it happens. And quickly, like you said, pops back in, you know, like someone else comes in there, go, oh, no, you don't. Boom, puts you back on the track. But there's some great residual effects of that with a lot of these people that were causing problems, you know, running, you know, like retiring from office, and, you know, different movements coming out, because from the C19 to the truther movement to the, you know, what's going on, people that were very firm in their belief, nope, it's got to be this or this. Well, they're waking up and realizing that the people that you've been dealing with publicly in governments or whatever are lying to you. And they, you know, and people don't want to be lied to anymore. There's too many things have transpired. And I think once that's part of that awakening stage, you know, that ascension, they have to realize we've been lied to and we cannot let this happen again.
Yeah, and I think at the same time, that's where the empowerment comes in. It's like, you know, okay, fine. You know, everyone wants to blame the government or blame some movement or blame CERN. It's like, well, hang on. But how many minutes are you spending in meditation to get your own truth? How often are you connecting with source to get your own truth? And I think that's where we can bring it back to us, because there's lots of problems out there and lots of people out there and all sorts of frequencies. But we ultimately have the power to connect to source, and we have the power to connect to the star beings ourselves. And as long as we recognize that we can do that, then it doesn't matter what the government does or doesn't say, because you don't need their validation. You don't need anyone to do anything, because if you sit your ass down and cleanse your chakras and open your heart, you will get your own connection. And that's it. That's where the work
100%.
is.
100%. I'm so with you. There you go. I'm so with you. It took me a while to get into my own meditation states and do things without this. Everybody's like, oh, love and light. And I'm like, stop, you know, but you have an epiphany moment and you're like, okay, got it. And once you get that moment, and it could happen anytime, you'll never be the same, and nothing will ever be the same. It's the coolest thing when you finally when you go from here to up here and you're like seeing things from like a different view, you're like, oh, I can't believe I let that bother me. Oh, that's so nothing. And then you go up, and then you try to bring people around with you up. Like, that's what I do with my kids. I mean, I try to sneak it in with, you know, I'm there to help them with the process. And, you know, one of the things I do to help them out, and I tell people to do this too, if you ever travel with your children or you're just bored and you want to do something to do, you do as other kids, try to talk to them telepathically. And you can do it simply, like, just start by doing things. I'm thinking of a color, you know, whatever it is, go one answer, boom, one answer. And you'll see. And the more you start doing, I'm thinking of a number, I'm thinking of a place, I'm thinking of an animal, and just get it in your mind's eye and then project that to your kids, and they'll start picking up on it, and they'll start using part of their brains. And then that helps them to awaken. So it helps them to blossom. I remember growing up, we had a family, and this is before all this, like, frequency and all this other stuff. And my friend Andy used to talk to his mother and get communications from his mother, because this is a mother, like, child was born within her body, it's developed. And he would just like, but I know, but I told you I was going to go. And I'm watching this, and she's not saying anything, but he's answering her. She's just sitting there, and I'm like, I know what's going on here. And it's so fluid, it's innate. And I go, do you guys just have a conversation? Yeah. And like, were you listening? And I'm like, oh, it's kind of hard to listen, but they were talking to each other. He was responding to his mother without, I never heard a word come out of his mother's mouth, as if he was having a conversation. It's the coolest thing. And I do this with my kids. Again, my oldest has a boyfriend now, so she's like, dancing on air. It's like, ooh, but my youngest is very intuitive to it, and she's a great soul, though. It's really, she's probably one of those star children. Yeah. She's definitely, she's scared out of her mind from it, so it's going to take her a little bit longer. But I think with me around to help her with the adjustments and stuff, she'll be fine.
Yeah.
Down the line. Yeah, but
amazing.
Oh, I just love it. I mean, it's I have to be there like at night when she's scared, and of course you have to, help her out and stuff. But she just, the things that come out of her mouth are just like, oh my God, how do you know that? And it's just, it's good. It's, she has this positiveness that when she's with people, everybody loves her. They're like, who's the best friend in school? Oh, it's, my daughter's name, and like all these kids saying it. I'm like, it says a lot when you see people, and or you have people come to you like, I heard you're pretty good to talk to. I'm like, oh, here we go. I got to be an analyst again.
I get that a lot as well.
Yeah. You know what else I got? I got a lot, and actually, it's usually after a UFO event or a sighting. You can hear the high pitch, or I can visually see something. I walk around, and I guess I'm strange looking, but people stare at me as if I'm a celebrity or famous, or they know me. Like if you saw a celebrity walking the street, you'd be like, oh, that's what it, but it's weird, and they just stare at you. And what they don't understand is the reason why I may look familiar is because we're probably in the same craft with each other, and you just don't remember it.
Yeah.
So it's weird.
Well, everything happens for a reason. Bryan, thank you so much for
it's my pleasure
sharing your story here with us today. There's been so many gems in there, and some beautiful messages for humanity as well, which I think this is really what it's all about, so really appreciate your presence with us on the show.
I appreciate you. I'm honored to have been on, and you to ask me, and I'm available at any time if you want to talk more. I'm sorry about the technical difficulty, but I think sometimes some of the other beings don't want you talking about what you're talking about.
I get it.
So I'm gonna get that glitch on them.
It's all good. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Be well.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to First Contact. I'm your host Eesha Patel, and I'm so excited to have this conversation about open contact with extraterrestrial beings. Come join me in the Facebook community where you can continue the discussion, or keep listening for another episode of First Contact.